So it is March 24th, the 3 p.m. session. Okay, so let's begin. Please open your envelope containing your clues and review them in silence for the next 5 minutes until I give you further instruction. Please do not mix up your envelopes. Awesome. So you may now begin your group discussions and come up with your team's answers. Once you're done, please inform me and I'll collect your team's answer sheet.
Just figure out the murderer, the weapon, time, place, and diffuser.
So would the time probably be 12:30?
I was thinking between 12:30.
And about 12:30?
Yeah.
That's what I would think. And then for the weapon,
I was thinking night.
I was thinking a knife.
Okay.
We'll see.
Do you have any idea who the murderer could be? 'Cause I have a few suspicions. Mr. Kelly was murdered, right? You
Yeah.
know that? Okay, cool.
So I don't think it's,
Just make sure.
I don't
Have
think,
you?
it's definitely not, I don't think it's Miss Smith.
I don't think it's Miss Smith either.
Cause the elevator guy didn't
Yeah.
mention her.
Funny enough, the elevator guy went off duty at 12:30. If that affects the time whatsoever, because he saw them walking around. He saw Miss Smith. He said that Miss Smith was in the lobby of the apartment when he
Mhm.
was off duty too.
Mm-hmm.
And we're thinking like the murder was around 12:30. If that's like our hunch, that he
Mhm.
had left his duty at 12:30.
Mine says that Miss Smith saw Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Jones' apartment at 11:55, and then Mr. Jones shot an intruder at midnight.
So then, okay, so Miss,
He shot an intruder.
Yeah, it said Mr. Jones shot an intruder in his apartment building at 12 o'clock midnight.
Wow.
And a knife with Mr. Kelly's blood on it was found in Mrs. Smith's yard.
Yeah, and I had Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it.
Yeah, and mine says police were unable to locate Mr. Scott after the murder, and then Mr. Kelly's wife disappeared after the murder.
Apparently Mr. Kelly's bloodstains were also found on the carpet of the hall of Mr. Jones' apartment. And in the car, I think also in the car of Mr. Kelly. Yeah, his bloodstains were found in Mr. Scott's car, and his blood was also found on the carpet in the hall of Mr. Jones' apartment. But it was clear. Apparently, it was clearly stated that he had been dragged a long distance, which is probably why you could find the blood stains in the car and the carpet.
Yeah, it says Mr. Kelly's body was found in the park. So I feel like Mr. Jones might have shot Mr. Kelly, and then Mr. Scott might have killed his wife, and then tried to blame Miss Smith. I don't know.
That would be explaining why the knife was in her yard.
Yeah.
What did they say about Mr. Kelly's wife? Did they give
It said Mr. Kelly's wife disappeared after the murder.
I have that Mr. Kelly's wife frequently left the building with Mr. Scott, and the elevator man saw Mr. Kelly's wife go to Mr. Scott's apartment at 11:30. So,
I wonder if she was in on it.
so there was blood in Mr. Scott's car,
Yeah, there's blood
and
and in the carpet in the hall outside Mr. Jones' apartment.
What did you say about Miss Kelly?
what did you say? Mr. Kelly's wife
Yeah.
frequently left the building with Mr. Scott, and the elevator man saw Mr. Kelly's wife go to Mr. Scott's apartment at 11:30.
The elevator man also saw Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Scott's room at 12:25.
Okay. There.
And then Miss Smith
So
saw
then-
Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Jones' apartment at 11:55.
It's all what?
Miss Smith saw Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Jones' apartment at 11:55.
Okay. So maybe the elevator operator is like lying? Cause how is he in all these places? Wait, say that again? So the elevator man said he saw Mr. Kelly's wife go to no. So Mr. Kelly's wife was in Mr. Scott's apartment at 11:30.
Okay.
Okay, so she was there at 11:30.
And what did yours say?
Mine jumps to 12:15. Do you have one prior?
Oh, I have, Miss Smith saw Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Jones' apartment building at 11:55, and then Mr. Jones shot an intruder in his apartment building at 12 o'clock midnight.
The elevator operator reported to police that he saw Mr. Kelly at 12:15 a.m. So
So then that would,
that shot wouldn't have killed Kelly.
yeah, so then it was a knife.
I'm assuming. Does anyone have anything prior to 12:25? Because next time is minus 12:25. I got that the elevator saw Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Scott's room at 12:25. And then at 12:30, the elevator man went off duty.
So what did it say about Miss Smith? The weapon was in her backyard?
Yeah,
Mine said they found a knife with Mr.
Miss-
Kelly's blood on it in Mrs. Smith's yard.
yeah, mine said they found a knife in Miss Smith's yard with Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it.
So I'm assuming that Mr. Scott killed Mr. Kelly since it was Mr. Kelly's blood.
Mm-hmm.
And his fingerprints.
Yeah.
But then he was dragged through like a lot of places, which is kind of weird.
Where was he driving?
His blood was found in Mr. Scott's car.
Uh-huh.
His blood was also found in Mr. Jones' apartment, like the hallway outside
Right.
Mr. Jones' apartment.
Okay.
And it also said that it was obvious from the condition of Mr. Kelly's body that he had been dragged a long distance. And you said you found his body in the park?
Yeah. So they probably dragged his body to the park.
Yeah, they probably dragged it into the car and dumped him in the park.
So maybe, we have to come up with a reason, a motive?
Well, mine says Mr. Jones had told Mr. Kelly that he was going to kill him, but I don't think it was Mr. Jones.
Yeah, that would be
And then Mr. Kelly had destroyed Mr. Jones's business by stealing all of his customers.
Backstory.
Maybe they were having an affair,
I was wondering if Mrs. Kelly was having an affair with
Mr. Kelly and
Scott.
Mr. Scott.
Yeah.
But the thing is, why?
We have to
Well-
connect this to Mr. Jones somehow, type of thing. Because there hasn't been any reason Mr. Scott would kill.
I feel like Mr. Scott and Mrs. Kelly were trying to do away with Mr. Kelly.
Right.
And then they set up Mr. Jones, and since Mr. Jones said that he was going to kill
Oh yeah, that's
Mr.
just
Kelly,
Mr.
so I feel like
Jones.
they probably set it up.
Yeah.
So would you say that they shot, like they stole Mr. Jones's gun somehow and like shot him?
Was it Mr. Jones's gun?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Jones was the one who shot the intruder.
But did he say that he shot the intruder?
Yeah, it says Mr.
Oh, he
Jones
admitted he
shot an intruder in his apartment building.
So maybe it was like he shot the intruder and then Mr. Kelly like went for help or something and then found his wife there. 'Cause what time did the wife get there? 11:30.
I don't have anything on his wife.
So the wife got to Mr. Scott's apartment at 11:30.
What time did the intruder get shot? Midnight?
Yeah.
And the intruder got shot at midnight. What was the other time?
They saw the elevator operator saw Mr. Kelly at 12:15, and at 12:25, the elevator guy saw Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Scott's room, which would be kind of delayed
If he was just shot.
if
Two more times.
yeah shows up half an hour.
Okay, so I don't think the intruder was Mr. Kelly.
No, because, I mean, unless if he lived through the shot and then showed up again.
But the bullet was taken from Mr. Kelly's leg and it matched the gun owned by Mr. Jones.
Oh, so he probably shot.
And only one bullet had been fired from Mr. Jones's gun.
So it had to be them.
Yeah. If Mr. Jones admits that he shot,
Mr. Kelly.
so that means.
So he probably went down to Mr. Scott's room looking for help. Probably
Right.
saw his wife.
Yeah, that would explain why we found blood outside Mr. Jones' hallway.
Right.
Since he had to,
Yeah,
Weird.
Mr. Jones shot Kelly.
but he's still alive at this point.
Yeah, I guess it's only the leg. Oh, and
Yeah.
the elevator operator saw Kelly at 12:15, and it sounds like he was shot at 12.
Mm-hmm.
He saw him at 12:15, and at 12:25 he went to Mr. Scott's room.
Mm-hmm. Where the wife was. Who else has something about like Mrs. Smith, Miss Smith?
Oh, Miss Smith's. There was a knife found in Miss Smith's yard. Miss Smith said nobody left the apartment building between 12:25 and 12:45.
And Mr. Kelly at 12:25 went to
Scott.
Scott, and he didn't leave. So how did he get in the car? So Miss Smith must be lying then. Cause I have that Miss Smith. She followed Mr. Kelly.
She did.
Yeah. So Miss Smith followed Mr. Kelly.
So she was in Mr. Scott's room too then?
It doesn't say that specifically. It just said that Miss Smith followed Mr. Kelly. But Miss Smith said that no one left the building between 12:25 12:45. But the elevator man
He was
said
off duty at 12:30.
he was off duty at 12:30. But he said that 12:25
He saw
Mr. Kelly
Kelly
went to
Mr.
Mr.
Scott.
Scott's. So then how'd he get in the car if he didn't leave? So then either the elevator guy or Miss Smith would be lying. Cause they can't book that.
I mean, unless if he like killed him and then dragged his body after 12:45.
I have medical examiner said the body had was dead since 12:30.
Oh, wow.
Mr. Kelly had been dead for an hour before his body was found. His body was found at 1:30. So he was dead at 12:30.
Okay. Wow. So, I mean, the only person that could have really killed him would be Mr. Scott then, because he went to his room at 12:25.
Unless the elevator guy's lying.
True.
So
Or if the elevator guy killed him.
yeah,
I don't see any reason why he would.
he got off at 12:30. So how do you get him? But how?
I also don't see any reason for Mr. Scott to kill him unless if he was like having an affair with his wife.
Yeah. Blood was found in Mr. Scott's car then.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, but I still have the knife with Mr. Kelly's blood and it was in Mrs. Smith's yard.
Yeah, same.
And then Mr. Kelly's wife disappeared after the murder, and the police were unable to locate Mr. Scott after the murder.
Mrs. Kelly disappeared?
Yeah, Mrs. Kelly disappeared. Police were unable to locate Mr. Scott, and then when police tried to locate Mr. Jones after the murder, he had also disappeared. So like they're all gone.
Maybe the three of them were together.
Jones, Scott, and Mrs. Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
That could make sense. Jones because of business, and maybe Scott and Kelly had something.
Something going on. So maybe the three of them worked
Yeah.
together.
And like Jones messed with his gun. And Kelly thinking Scott would help went to his room, and like 5 minutes later he was
He was dead because what Mr. Jones didn't kill him,
Yeah.
and they knew what was going on, so they like
Just finished it
killed
off.
him. Yeah,
It sounds like it was done with a knife.
I think it was under the knife.
Because it had Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it. I'm just wondering where Miss Smith comes into all
And there's
this.
just something weird with the elevator guy and Miss Smith because
Yeah.
like they can't both be.
I mean, unless if they wait until after 12:45 to bring the body into the car and like drive it to the park.
No, body left between 12:25 and 12:45.
Yeah, that's what Miss Smith said. Does anyone else have anything on Miss Smith?
Johnson followed Mr. Kelly.
Miss Smith did?
Yeah. That's it.
I feel like she just followed him like just because like I don't think she actually like did anything. Like she was just following him, see what was going on.
Mhm. But if she followed him, wouldn't she figure out between
12:25 and 12:45 that he was dead.
yeah
Well, he was probably still in the room.
even between 11:30? Wait,
Like what time did they leave Mr. Scott's room?
we don't have that.
They don't have that. We just said that Kelly got into Scott's room at 12:25, but they never say when anyone leaves. Because the elevator man went off duty at 12:30, so that's he would know.
And Mr. Kelly died at 12:30.
Yeah, according to the medical examiner, an hour before he was found, and he was found at 1:30.
So we have to time the murder.
Yeah, should we write like what we know, or what we
Good.
think we know for sure?
Do that.
Do you wanna write?
I can do it. Time of the murder 12:30 a.m.
12:30 a.m.
Do we have an idea what the weapon could be?
The knife, I think.
Yeah, I don't think the bullet killed him.
Cause there's a lot of, well,
Yeah, so if you get shot in the leg.
I mean, he could have died from blood loss, but then that wouldn't make sense why the blood was on the knife.
Yeah.
the only reason why I would see the bullet killing him is because how is he doing all this walking and stuff? Like, if he
Well,
was
could
shot
it
in
just
the leg,
really be like the adrenaline? He's like trying to get help.
just like running,
Could be limping.
nothing.
Yeah, we don't have to put the knife down, like that's all. All of us have to agree to it. Although we can probably take a guess at the place of the murder. He went to Scott's room at 12:25, he was proclaimed dead at 12:30.
Yeah, he was dead at 12:30.
It's just weird because like all three of them disappeared after the murder.
Was there blood in the hallway, in Mr. Scott's hallway?
In Mr. Jones' hallway.
But not Mr. Scott's hallway?
They didn't say that they found a knife in Miss Smith's yard that had Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it, and you said that knife had Kelly's blood on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they killed him in the car.
Oh, that's smart.
Because how isn't there blood?
Although,
But why wouldn't there be blood in well, they didn't say there wasn't, they just didn't say.
the only thing that would kill that argument is that Miss Smith said no one left the building from 12:25 to 12:45.
I feel like she's lying. I think she's lying.
Do you think they would give us false information on the cards?
On what?
Do you think they'd give us like a false information on the cards then? Like on the strips? Or like have someone lie?
Yeah. Someone has to be lying. We'll do it.
Yeah,
makes
because
sense.
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Someone has to be lying. 'Cause 12:25,
He went to Scott's room.
we walked to Scott's room. But maybe it was the elevator operator though,
Yeah, I always wondered.
because
Maybe he set up the whole
he
thing.
went off at 12:30.
12:30.
That's when this
Yeah,
guy
convenient.
was dead.
A little too convenient.
So, I mean, then he wouldn't see them leave, but,
And then he probably would have put the knife in. Well, I feel like the elevator guy, and then Kelly's wife, and Mr. Jones and Mr. Scott were probably all in it. But then Kelly's wife, Scott, and Jones all disappeared afterwards.
Yeah, it kind of surprised me that Miss Smith didn't disappear either. That disappeared with them, you know.
never left the building between 12:25. Maybe he got in the elevator for help, and
Or just to go up another floor.
just to go up, and maybe the elevator guy, like, didn't, like, take him there, and is lying? But how would he get that money?
Yeah, that's the only thing I was thinking about. That's because the knife has Scott's fingerprints on it.
So what does everyone have on Mr. Scott?
Mr. Scott's fingerprints were on the knife found in Miss Smith's yard.
Okay.
Miss Kelly's blood was found in Mr. Scott's car. And the elevator man saw Kelly go to Scott's room at 12:25. That's all I
I feel like Mr. Scott's being set up
Yeah.
because mine
That's
says
too obvious.
Yeah.
mine says that the police weren't able to locate Mr. Scott after the murder.
I just have the elevator operator said Mr. Kelly's wife frequently left the building with Mr. Scott. And the elevator man saw Mr. Kelly's wife go to Mr. Scott's room at 11:30.
Maybe the elevator guy is trying to set it up
So it
to
looks
seem that Mr. Scott has a motive to kill.
right.
Mr. Scott's motive being that he has a thing with Mrs. Kelly.
Yeah.
But what would the elevator guy get out of this though? Like what would his motive be to kill
I don't think
anyone?
the elevator man had anything against Kelly.
The only thing I could think of is maybe he's associated with Mr. Jones, because I have Mr. Jones had told Mr. Kelly that he was going to kill him. And then Mr. Kelly had destroyed Mr. Jones's business by stealing all of his customers.
You see, I feel like with those two, it won't be Mr. Kelly, but they'll, it won't be Mr. Jones, but they'll just use him because of those reasons. They'll just frame him.
Yeah, those are two obvious of reasons.
But I feel like, cause the knife was found in Miss Smith's backyard
Right. With Kelly's blood
with Kelly's blood on it
and
and
Scott's.
Mr. Scott's fingerprints on it.
Right.
But nobody left the building between 11:25 and 11:45.
Right.
But that's impossible because within the next 40 minutes they found his body. So that means that they had to have transported his body because the blood was in the car,
So I guess they might.
he was found at the park, and the knife is outside. So someone went outside, someone had the time to go outside, throw away the knife.
Well, they found his body at 1:30 in the morning, right?
Right.
I mean, that could happen. They left after 12:45. It gives them 45 minutes to throw the knife
Throw the
somewhere and dump
drag
his body.
him?
Yeah, drag him from, I guess. They probably just dragged him from the apartment into the car, drove off to the park, dumped him there, threw the
Dumped him
knife in
there.
Miss Smith's yard. It's a weird timing, but I don't think it's impossible.
How could you get into her yard?
Yeah, that's weird.
I don't know when his body was here. why would Miss Smith follow Mr. Kelly though? Why is that information given to us?
I think I only have one. I have 2 things on her,
Miss Smith followed Mr. Kelly.
but that's just about Miss Smith's yard and the fact that she saw Noelle between 12:25 and 12:45. Do you have anything on the relationship between Smith and Kelly?
Just that a knife with Mr. Kelly's blood and it was found in Miss Smith's yard. Miss Smith saw Mr. Kelly go to Mr. Jones' apartment building at 11:55.
It's probably when he got shot, cause he was shot at midnight.
Well, Mr. Jones shot an intruder, but I feel like if he just shot Mr. Kelly, probably if it's in the leg, then would it take him like a half hour to die?
That's why he had to have gotten stabbed after.
Yeah.
Cause he just
Yeah.
wasn't,
Because the bullet taken from his leg matched the gun from Mr. Jones, and only one bullet was fired from Mr. Jones' gun. So it had to be that.
Okay, so Mr. Jones,
And he was still moving and going places according
Yeah,
to the
so-
elevator guy.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Kelly was shot by Mr. Jones, but he wasn't dead.
He
Yeah,
was in
that's
there.
why we had the blood in front of his hallway too.
So
Yeah.
Mr. Jones is definitely not the killer.
Yeah.
No.
So he's out. So it was Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Scott,
Miss Smith.
and Miss Smith and the elevator guy.
Yeah.
Where was the elevator man after?
12:30. I don't have anything except for the fact that he was off duty.
And then Kelly and Scott and then Jones, like Mrs. Kelly, like they all disappeared after the murder, so I feel like maybe Miss Smith has something to do with it. Cause they're just all like, they're gone.
Miss Smith did disappear.
No, she didn't disappear. Well, they didn't say that she didn't, but I just had Mr. Kelly's wife disappeared. Police weren't able to locate Mr. Scott after the murder. And police tried to locate Mr. Jones after the murder. They discovered that he had disappeared. So like the 3 of them are just gone after the murder. So maybe Miss Smith just like did away with all of them.
Mr. Jones probably ran off because, like, you can't just shoot someone.
Yeah, Mr. Jones probably thought he killed him.
Yeah.
And then ran off.
And then
So
ran
because
off.
he has really good reason to.
Right, and he said
Oh,
he
yeah.
would kill him. He
Mhm.
shot him. He probably thought he killed him, so he ran. So I don't even think he's in
Yeah,
cahoots
I think
with
it was
Miss.
just way too obvious for Mr. Jones.
Right, it's too
Yeah.
obvious. But then,
So we're left with.
so they
So we're left with Smith and then Mrs. Kelly and then Mr. Scott.
yeah.
And the
and
then
elevator
the
guy. So now Mrs. Kelly and Mr. Scott, they ran away, but they left the car.
That's a good question.
So now where's the car?
The car, they found
It was at the
blood
park.
in. Yeah, because they found blood in his car, so they had to have left it here.
So now I just feel like they wouldn't do that because if they ran away, wouldn't they take the car?
Unless Miss Smith drove home. No, she was still there.
Unless someone else stole their car or took their car.
They could have always gotten like a taxi or something, because like if you have blood in the car, I wouldn't take it either. It looks suspicious, you know.
Or that they're running, like.
Were they running?
Like if they're running away or what for whatever reason they left, they wouldn't. Like
And they have to come back. They do live there, you know. They need to pack their stuff.
they left.
And they'll probably will, but I guess for like the weekend or like the time being, they won't show up, so they don't look suspicious.
I feel like Miss Smith did it. No, I really think Miss Smith did it because
Yeah, cause
first of all,
Just-
none of them are here to talk for themselves.
Yeah.
So she could just be making up lies. And she followed, she followed Mr. Kelly. Why?
Yeah,
For
there's,
why were you following him?
the thing is, we need to come up with a motive.
The
for why.
motive for why she would kill him.
Yeah.
and if it's
Maybe
with
she
the
loved
knife,
him or
cause
something?
weren't Scott's fingerprints on the knife? So
Yeah.
how could Mr. Smith kill
How could
Mr. Kelly with someone else's fingerprints?
Yeah. Also, she hired,
Maybe she
Well-
took their knife or something.
or she tried to
Well,
get.
then her fingerprints would be on it too.
Yeah, like if you planned
Oh,
it out and you like hold it with something.
Maybe she just had like gloves on or something.
Yeah,
Also, she got Mr. Scott to do the dirty work for her.
for her. Cause how, tell me how Miss Smith follows him around, but had no idea where he was.
Yeah,
Like,
that's.
Yeah.
you know
That's
what I
weird.
mean?
Wait, what did it say that she had no idea where he was?
Well, cause she said, when's the last time she said she saw him?
The only thing I have about that is elevator man said that Miss Smith was in the lobby of the apartment building when he went off duty.
At 12:30.
So yeah,
She was in the lobby at 12:30.
but he was dead by then.
He was dead at 12:30, and she was in the lobby at 12:30.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, like he got off duty at 12:30, so like within that minute time frame, I guess. That'd be really weird. Went upstairs, killed him, and went back down to the lobby.
Well, why is she in the lobby? Maybe Miss Smith and Mr. Kelly were having an affair or something.
I was thinking that.
Cause she's following him and then she's waiting in the lobby.
Yeah.
Like she's waiting in the lobby. Why are you in the
I
lobby
know,
at
I
12:30?
wonder-
You know, like
Yeah.
you're in the lobby at 12:30 in the morning. Why? Where are you
Yeah.
going?
So maybe she was just waiting for him.
Maybe she's waiting for him.
You know what? You know how Miss Kelly, Mr. Scott, we were thinking how they had something together?
Yeah.
I wonder if that has anything to do with like Miss Kelly's jealousy, because it looks like Miss Smith and Mr. Kelly had something.
Right.
Miss Kelly and Mr. Scott had something. I wonder if those two had planned murder on Mr. Kelly because Miss Kelly got jealous of Miss Smith maybe, or something like that. Some weird love triangle square thing.
Yeah.
The weird thing is that like 3 of them disappeared after.
Yeah,
Mr. Jones, it makes sense why he left. He ran because he looked guilty.
he looked extra.
Yeah.
But maybe
And then Scott and Mrs. Kelly weren't there.
the thing
They
is, why would he
disappeared.
go to Mr. Scott's apartment?
Thinking he could help. You're shot in the leg.
Why Mr. Scott? Why not your own apartment?
True.
Does Miss Kelly live in the building? They live in the building too?
I would assume. Yeah, Miss Kelly and Mr. Kelly lived in the same room. Yeah.
Yeah, they live in the same building, so why did he go to his apartment?
Yeah, it sounds
He
like
went to
everyone lives in the
Mr.
same
Scott.
building.
He went to Mr. Scott's apartment.
And it's not like they said that they were on the same floor. That would kind of make sense,
Yeah.
but maybe he knew Miss Kelly was with Mr. Scott.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I have when the elevator man saw Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kelly was bleeding slightly, but he did not seem too badly hurt. I don't know if that changes anything.
No, probably after he was shot.
When's
Yeah.
the last time the elevator guy saw him? 12:25, right?
Yeah, the elevator guy saw him go to Mr. Scott's room at 12:25, and then he was off at 12:30, so that was the last time he saw him.
So he got shot at 12.
How are you shot in the leg but you don't look so bad?
Right.
You know?
He was bleeding slightly, but he didn't seem too badly hurt from being shot in the
Being
leg.
shot?
And then you just go off work at 12:30, and then Mrs. Smith is sitting downstairs
Yeah, that's so suspicious.
at 12:30. The thing is that the elevator guy wouldn't get anything out of this.
Yeah, because there's no backstory.
Should we just get rid of the elevator guy?
Yeah, I really think he's not.
So we just have Mr. Scott, Mrs. Kelly, and
Miss Smith?
Ms. Smith.
I think Miss Smith is lying, no matter what.
Maybe Mr. Scott did kill Mr. Kelly and then saw that Miss Smith was there and then tried to frame her so that Mr. Scott wouldn't get caught. But then that doesn't make sense to why. And then Mr. Kelly, Mrs. Scott, and Mr. Kelly kind of like ran off, I guess, because they couldn't find them after the murder.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they would have to have.
You said Miss Kelly went into Mr. Scott's room? Did someone say that? Okay.
Yeah, at 11:30.
So they were definitely at 11:30.
Yeah, 11:30 p.m. It's an hour before the murder.
And then Mr.
Miss-
Kelly had been in Mr. Jones's apartment at
At 12.
11:55 and got shot at 12.
He got shot at 12. Then at 12:25, he went into Mr. Scott's apartment.
And then he was dead at 12:30. It just seems too obvious that it was Mr. Scott, you know? Goes into the room,
Mhm.
5 minutes later is killed.
Maybe Mrs. Kelly did it and she framed him.
Yeah.
But that doesn't explain his fingerprints.
True.
Maybe she was framing him, like maybe that's why she went up to his place.
Except I don't see if you're framing someone, you would throw the knife into Miss Smith's room.
I feel like Mrs. Smith maybe like saw the whole thing
And they just tried
and
to frame her.
they just tried to blame her.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because
But-
she follows him around too. She follows
Yeah, so she probably saw. And then
But they would have.
Although she was in the lobby at 12:30.
If she was in the lobby at 12:30, then.
Unless he died like 12:29, she ran down with the stretch.
In the lobby at 12:30. They killed him.
so like between 12:25 and 12:30,
He was.
they would have had to actually killed him.
Right.
Because he was definitely dead by 12:30. And if you kill someone with a knife, I guess it depends where. Because if you like stab them right in the heart, they'll die right away.
Yeah.
But maybe, well, he was stabbed in the back.